Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Nancy Drew Whispers in the Fog. Chapter 10, Here's Looking at You. Nancy's heartbeat surged with the wave that carried her into the sea cave. Suddenly her kayak slowed and she drifted for a few minutes before hitting the inner wall of the cave. As the kayak floated, she felt her racing pulse slow and she took her deep breath. She looked around, her eyes adjusted to the dim light. It was like being in a cave on land, except the floor of the cave was the sea. The cave had dug into the huge rock tower that rose up from the ocean floor and arched high over the water's surface. Over centuries, the sea had been hollowed on the rock into a long, dark grotto. A few columns of light filtered down through the holes in the side of Nancy's ceiling of the cave. Nancy's kayak was tangled in webs of kelp and swept into the cave with her. The water inside the cave was calm and dark, but it was periodically flushed by the wave of foam. Nancy's kayak bumped against a ledge that protruded from the cave wall. She saw that in some places the ledge was underwater, and in some places it skimmed the surface. In front of her, the ledge formed a platform that jutted out several yards above the water surface. Nancy placed her paddle on the ledge. Then she hoisted herself out of the cockpit and out of the ledge, pulling the kayak next to her. She tried to stand up, but her legs were so wobbly she had to drop down to a crouch. Then she sat, pulling up her knees and leaning her back against the shiny, damp wall of the cave. Nancy rubbed her calves and knees. Then she leaned back again, took a deep breath, and rested for a few minutes. Nancy, Ned's familiar voice got out. Nancy, are you in here? Where are you? Over here, Ned, Nancy called back. See, I told you she'd be okay, George told Ned as they paddled toward Nancy's ledge. George, Nancy said, what are you doing here? The last time I saw you, you were way out with Katie and Jenna. Yeah, well, it wasn't much fun, George replied. They have the real competitive thing going on. I mean, they're ferocious. There's no way I could keep up, so I thought I'd come back and whip you beginners. As I was paddling in, I saw that surge take you into the cave. Ned and I got here about the same time. That's really cool, Ned said, paddling in a circle so he could check the cave. Let's do a little exploring, Nancy said. Do Katie and Jenna know where you are, George? They don't know anything right now, but how much they want to beat each other. They couldn't care less how we are. She checked her sports watch. We got at least another hour before they're ready to call it quits. Good, Nancy said. George and Ned held her kayak steady while she climbed back into her cockpit. Come on, she said as she sat into her seat and braced her legs. Let's take a look around. Nancy led the others toward what she thought was the back of the cave. The paddling was so much easier in the calm water. The farther back they went into the large place, the quieter it got. Soon even the roar of the surf was like a distant echo. Nancy was surprised to find there was more than one room in the cave. They wandered in and out of openings and archways for about half an hour. Occasionally, they realized they had gotten turned around and backtracked into an area they had already explored. Finally, they came to a small room that was almost bright compared to some of the others they had been in. A large hole at the top of the cave released a thick shaft of light into the center of the small room. Even a few whiffs of fog drifted around them. I have to pull over the ledge for a minute, Ned said. I want to stretch my leg as I'm getting a cramp. Nancy and George followed him over the wall of the small room. Ned got out of his kayak and did a few quadricep stretches. The light was a dimmer at the edge, but something still caught Nancy's eye. Something shiny blended from the water from a section of the ledge that was just below the surface. She paddled over and reached under the water. The object seemed to shimmer as the water moved over it. She took a hold of it, but it was jammed into a crack in the inner wall of the cave. Patiently, she tugged at the object, jiggling until she finally pulled it free. Hey, look at this, she called to George and Ned. It was a silver belt buckle in the shape of a horse's head with a windswept mane. Very cool, George said. It looks almost new. I know, Nancy agreed. It couldn't have been there for long. The salt hasn't affected it yet. The only real marks are where it was wedged into the rock. Wonder how it got there, Ned said. The same way I did, probably, Nancy said. It had no choice. She zipped the belt buckle into her wetsuit. Nancy and George held Ned's kayak as he climbed with the cockpit. How are your legs? She asked him. Better, he said. The stretches really help. Ready to do some exploring? Nancy asked Ned and George. Lead the way, George replied. As Nancy paddled away from the edge, she heard an odd sound. It was almost like a whisper echoing around the walls of the cave. Did you hear that? She asked, her voice hushed as she listened. What? I didn't hear anything, Ned said. He sounded a little impatient. You know what? I'm ready to get out of here. I feel like I'm going in circles. I'm ready for some daylight. Maybe we should hook back up with Katie and Jenna. Shh, Nancy said, idling her kayak. She closed her eyes, hoping that would help her concentrate on hearing. As she drifted, she heard the sound again. A little whisper floating through the fog. She couldn't make out any words exactly. It was more like a low whooshing moan from behind her. The sound floated over the filmy fog. It was strange and eerie. A shiver cascaded down her spine as she looked around. There, she said, her eyes popping out again. Did you hear that? She looked eagerly at her friends. I hear a sort of distant roaring noise, George said. I'm sure it's the waves breaking into the distance. George said, Is that what you mean? She leaned her head as if she were reaching for the same sound. I'm not hearing but my stomach growling, Ned said. I'm getting out of this place. Go ahead if you want, Nancy said. I'm not leaving until I check out the noise. She pointed her kayak in the direction of the sound. She paddled through an arch to dim the circle of the far wall. I don't think we've been here yet, George said. Well, that's a first, Ned answered. We've backtracked so much, I thought we made a complete tour of this cave at least twice. I guess I was wrong, George said. Looks like we're gonna back at the front of the cave again, or are we? George asked. This sure looks like an opening. It is, but I don't think it's the front, Nancy said. I think it's the back of the cave. Come on, let's go. She paddled off and reached the light within minutes. See, Nancy called back to the others. I knew it. It's like the back door of the cave. She paddled through the small opening just as the deep whisper sounded again, only this time it was louder and nearer. Nancy blinked for a minute when she emerged from inside the rock. They were completely enclosed in a thick fog bank, but still much brighter in the dim regions within the cave. There was a pale pinkish glow off to their left, and Nancy assumed that was the sun setting in the west. She knew that the shore was to their right, but she couldn't see it through the fog. She looked around. They had drifted far enough that she could barely see the outline of the sea cave behind them. She had never been in fog this thick and heavy. Suddenly, Nancy's kayak bumped into something hard. The eerie whisper curled her ears from the fog ahead of her. It was followed by a deep moan, and then the whisper again. Nancy, George gasped, her voice low and a little shaky. I hear it. Me too, Ned whispered. The three idled against the unwilling barrier now bumps against. Nancy felt transfixed, hypnotized by the unearthly sound. The soft whisper came closer and closer. Then something large and dark slowly broke the surface, and one huge eye stared back at her. And that's the end of that chapter. See you later.